question, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
And-
Kevin, go, you wanna let him go? Yeah, Kevin?
Hear anything?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, you guys were on mute,
Oh,
and so we haven't been, I didn't even know if you guys had started yet.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, we'll go back and start over again. Did you get that, Valerie, that doc for me?
Yeah,
Does a Word document work okay, or do you want a PDF?
this is fine. Do you want me
Okay.
to?
Well, here, Kevin, and, thank you for being on here. The purpose of this work session is we have more and more renewables coming into the county, of course, we all know that. And talked to Corey quite a while ago, and he goes, you know, he's saying, hey, I'm getting slammed by all this, you know, I need some help, you know. So we wanted to try and figure out a way to get the renewables to help fund the weed issues that are associated with their properties. And so we talked to Corey, talked to Eric, and at one point we came up with a budget that it costs to do, to fulfill the weed, you know, compliance, right, Corey? Is that?
Yes.
Oh, at this point it's compliance.
Yeah.
We presented it to the last solar farm. They agreed, so it became part of their agreement that they will pay, you know, $120,000 a year plus for personnel and equipment to help the weed department, or mitigation, not mitigation, but compliance. So what we would like to do as a county is, rather than wrestle with this, because it comes up every time a renewable comes to the county, whether it's wind or solar, you know, well, it doesn't come up every time, but we want to be able to tell them, okay, you come in with the last one I talked to was a 7,000 acre solar farm. Okay, figure into your costs of operating in Morrow County, this much for weed control. Or weed, you know, whatever, compliance. And so we want to be able to tell them that up front. So can you post that now so they can see that? Okay. So we put up some talking points there. And she's gonna post them there for you to look at. We'll talk about other things, but that's what we're trying to get to is get a standardized cost for renewables when they're gonna come and do business in Morrow County to take care of our weeds. Because our weed department was just getting inundated and buried. It wouldn't be able to keep up. So, you know, it's added cost to the counties. So that's what the purpose of this work session is. So that makes sense, Kevin?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So Corey, you want to go again then?
yeah, so my explanation was, as far as the question was to give an overview of the county's duties, workload and responsibilities currently in relationship to renewable lands. And my explanation was that the workload and responsibilities stem from compliance and what's listed in the ordinance as a county weed inspector. And I highlighted some of the verbiage under the weed inspector is discovery of any noxious weeds that are being permitted to grow or produce seed within the district that are noxious, or destroy, cut, supervise the destruction of cutting noxious weeds. And conduct investigations, approve plans, and clarify under, you know, certain weed projects and entities in the county. And that's what's been consuming my time with some of these energy entities is corrective behavior, getting them back in compliance or back to focus on what needs to be done and what's expected in the noxious weed draft plans, and a little bit of coordination and responsiveness to complaints and to issues that landowners are bringing up, and
Could you walk us through a typical incident, or if you wanna call it that, where say you got a complaint, or you know there's some weeds on a renewables property? What happens from there? What do you do? And what is the county's responsibility from there?
So, it started out is the complaints and, it was for educational purposes. Will you please reach out to these people, explain to them that this needs to be done, why they're,
You're telling the landowner this.
the landowner is telling me this. They're saying, would you please reach out to the energy company, even though they have a contract with them?
Okay,
They're saying on this property, this is what I'm seeing for escapage, this is what I'm seeing issues popping up. Would you please educate them on what needs to be done on this because it's creating these issues and they just don't know. And so, that's kind of how it started. That's how it started. And then, it morphed into a deeper dive into the noxious weed draft plan, which there were not adequate, sufficient, cases where issues would have to be addressed to allow for some of this escapage and some of these weeds to pop up. So then it morphed into working with them to come up with a viable and a good noxious weed draft plan to cover some of those issues where there's, let's say, just loopholes or just,
There was a lack
Oversight.
lack of control,
yeah.
lack of controls. Yeah.
so,
Right.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and then it's been just not being able to accomplish it because it is so much. These projects are so big, there is so much work out there, just not being able to accomplish it. Uh, maybe the spray applications, the timing of it,
Okay, let me interrupt you there.
yeah,
So you've jumped from compliance to actual mitigation now.
yes, yeah.
Okay, who's doing that mitigation? Who's doing the spraying?
So,
Let me back up just a little bit. Okay, so you go back, so you inform, the landowner tells you there's weeds on their property. And you inform the solar farm or the renewable company, you've got weeds on there. Okay, what if they don't take care of it? What happens then? Do you have a role in that now? What do you do?
Yeah, so a proper step, as it's written in the ordinances, is if it doesn't get addressed, I would step in, my department would step in, take care of it, send them a bill,
Take care of it being,
take care of the weeds itself. If it's not getting met, then we go in, take care of it. And get them
county
done.
equipment
county-
takes care of it, or do you hire a contractor?
No, it'd be the county equipment, the county
And
personnel.
county personnel, county equipment goes out and sprays the weeds, actually.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
happened in other counties.
Okay.
Or mechanically removes them,
Or
which we
can't-
had to do.
Yeah, one
Which I've
way or
had
the
to
other,
do,
though. The
yes,
point
yeah.
is, what I'm trying to get to is, if you tell them, your first job is to check on compliance.
Yeah.
Your second job is to tell them to get it done. If they don't, where do you go from there? The county, with county equipment, county people actually go out and mitigate them one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
and-
and then send the bill to the renewable company.
Yes.
Okay,
And that has happened before to the extent where it didn't get done. This is a mess. I should have been able to take care of it. I did not have the resources or time myself to take care of it. The county did not. And so it was put back on them. I can't do this, but you gotta do this. We gotta figure something out.
put back on them being the solar for the.
On the energy company
Okay.
itself, and then they put that on the contractor. And then,
They go hire a contractor.
yeah, and they already, in this case, they already have a contractor, but he did not go far enough because he's stretched and go far enough to take care of maybe that issue that was reported to him as an issue. And he couldn't accomplish it. And then it comes to me and then I can't accomplish it. And it's kind of a vicious cycle that way where nobody has the resources or manpower to really address these issues.
Okay.
So can I say something? So why wouldn't we just expect the landowner to take care of this? And he has the contract with the energy company. why wouldn't the landowner take care of his own weeds
Mhm.
and then go after the energy source, the energy company at that point? Why are we stuck in the middle other than compliance?
So I would say, I'd hate to give a percentage out there, but I would say in most instances, let's just say 70% of the time, let's even go higher than that, 85% of the time, that's what they do. They do that. And, yeah, that's just what happens most of the time. But there's instances that arise, like one that just happened where I go out to a road and there's carpets of puncture vine completely covering the road up to a wind tower. And nothing's been done. Something has to be, because people are driving by and driving over it and spreading it on other roads and so those are some of the extreme issues and stuff that we've been dealing
And you
with.
can't go back to the landowner on that.
The landowner, yes, I haven't. That landowner in that specific instance said, hey, they're not doing what they signed up to. They're not doing this. And it was just a time when I got to check it out and see what he was talking about. And then I discovered what he was talking about. So that, yeah, that was one instance. And there's been several other instances where it's, yeah, educating them, getting them to do the right thing and just trying to get them.
Okay, so it could branch either way. It could branch, they take care of it or they don't, and then the county equipment and men take care of it. Okay, and you're saying 70% of the time, they take care of it.
They have been taking care of it. Yeah, landowners and whatnot. Yeah. They've been taking care of a lot of it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then so in some instances, it's just been too much and they want to redo the noxious draft plan and get like the buffer zones out there that we've worked on in these plans and more covering what they disturb, to get the things taken care of, the issues that they create.
No,
And then there's also instances where there's outside landowners, neighbors that don't feel like they should have to flip the bill for that, and I think those energy companies have worked real hard to mitigate that, to do the right thing, and they've been good to work with in those instances. But it's just another compounding issue that kind of comes up that we gotta, work together and get figured out and try to get on the same page.
now, did you mention to me one time that there's been some friction about the county doing what a private contractor should be doing? Did you say
There-
that, or is that?
No, I did. And it's actually been friction in our county meetings with the state and the Oregon Department of Ag. Because there are counties out there that don't have resources to, or I should say contractors, to do the work that needs to be done, and they were getting fined, the energy companies were getting fined, county was stepping in and spraying it. Energy companies were like, great, we'll sign a check, here you go, and then just keep doing it, and just, why don't we just sign an agreement with you to take care of this? And so there are two instances, one in Sherman County, one in Clickitat County in Washington, where that does take place, because there's no contractor that will take it on or do
That
it.
hasn't happened in Morrow County.
It hasn't happened in Morrow County, and I think everybody, the administrative, this department, everything is like, would rather see a public entity fulfill that job obligation and not take a job away from the private sector.
Okay, now, so before we move on to the structure of the weed district and how it plays in and everything, just your opinion, is there an issue there about the county going, is it just not enough personnel and equipment? Are you okay with that where, if the landowner doesn't take care of it,
For the
or
county to step in.
then the county step in? Are you good with that, or do you want to change that, or as long
Well,
as you have the personnel?
if
And
there was personnel to do it, yes, that would be appropriate. That's how the law is written. That's how it's structured in the ordinances, and that's what would probably get it done if that were the case, if it were to go that far.
So is that for just the roadways though, or is that for all the way up to the easement, or is that onto the public, onto the private property?
So the ordinance says that, he has full authority within our easements and right of ways. If it's a property, he's supposed to bring it to the VOC, which then authorizes him to go and
Okay.
eradicate.
Let's,
And you said when you did that, that bill would go to the property owner, the renewable.
Renewable energy, yeah, renewable.
And I believe that's in the contract between the landowner and the energy company.
Mhm.
Way that's set up, the energy company is responsible for the weed mitigation. Correct.
Correct.
In our own ordinance, it says each person, firm, or corporation owning or occupying land within the district shall ensure it prevents.
So, okay,
Yeah.
so that's kind of, we kind of have we're on the same page there. Could you tell us what's the weed district and how do they play into this whole thing?
Yeah,
What legally, you know, maybe Justin has to talk about this too.
sure,
What kind of legal entity are they? What do they do out there? And
yeah,
I don't know, maybe Kevin has some
yeah.
idea on this or what.
Can I add something to number one,
Yeah.
just real quick, I think that might have been overlooked a little bit unless I missed it. A big part of number one is also just the administration side. Corey spends a lot of time in meetings with Odo and with the energy companies. And part of that is compliance and so do I, much more than ever was even a year ago. I wanted to add that. There's a huge burden of time in just the admin, let alone going out and what the ordinance says is to actually prove the
Good,
problem.
because see, in the end, the last thing we want to do is we want to put together a compile what our costs are to recover. 'Em. So that's the things that we need to keep in mind as we go through this.
Yes.
Just wanted to add that before we went to
Yeah,
number two.
right.
So and it was overwhelming there for a while, and I did work with Odo, and they, since then in the last year, Eric has come on board a lot in some of these meetings and helping and with direction, and then Odo has hired 3 people, 2 with Haley and Aldrich to combat some of the stuff. So personnel has expanded and it's helped, but it's still not to the point where when things happen, we still can't, just go out and get it done like it should be. I mean, they're still,
and this is your concern, cause you're falling behind, and the further behind you fall, the longer it's gonna take, and it's exponentially growing as a problem.
and irreversible damage
Okay.
that we've already seen with some of the stuff that we cannot go back to, and now it's creating big issues to handle it when it never should have got this way in the first place. And we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. It's just gonna continue with these big projects, and we just gotta get it right off the bat. So that's what's gonna help at the forefront, maybe with some of these services. Yeah,
And we still have other spray contracts and 1,000 miles of road,
yeah,
of county road to deal with.
yeah,
And I assume that's,
So-
go ahead, Justin.
yeah.
I'm just trying to, from listening so far and hearing the concerns, when this first came up, the idea was, adding fees or fees like that to the pilot program as a way to recoup the costs. Pilot program is separate than a SIP agreement. The SIP agreements have a lot more flexibility to add on stuff. Pilot's a little different. But when I step back and think about this more, this sounds a lot, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of like when you have a SIP agreement even with a larger other company, not wind or something, and that increases the workload of planning. Where planning is like, gosh darn, we are overworked, we gotta map this out, we need a GIS person, we need this. And that's a stretch that we always get older departments. It sounds similar to that. That's the only thing where it's like, and I guess my only reason I bring it up is we don't currently have additional costs associated, like when that project comes in. It might come in a SIP agreement, but those are just general set funds. Maybe they might get allocated for the department. Maybe there is general money that comes in. Is it the same type of thing where right now, because these newer projects coming in, that might have a lower, that get a tax break possibly, either through a pilot program or a SIP program, the county receives less money that might normally be applied by taxed regularly. That reduces like the money you might get for your department. Your department is currently underfunded for the work you're being asked to do, which is primarily compliance and then fixing afterwards. At least from the ordinance, everything else is even just keeping up with the compliance is the concern. Okay, that's where I wrap my head around that aspect too, where it's not just your department aspect, but I think this sounds very similar to like a lot of other departments. getting increased workload based upon some of these other projects. I mean, I could just look right at Eric for planning, right after planning for public works.
Road use agreements.
Yeah, but those are unique.
Yeah.
Just because I think you do have the authority separately, whether certain loads can go on a road. You have that ability to control up front.
Yeah.
What I see differently somewhat from looking at this so far with the weed is you have the after issue. You get, your control comes afterwards when there is a violation. That's where the control comes in more by saying, oh, you haven't kept on your weeds, we're going to, take care of it ourselves, or send out the noticing you have to take care of the weeds. If you don't, we'll go in, or maybe we can contract with somebody else to go in and do it and bill you. If you don't, the penalty can also be a lien. So let's say you go against the company that that's leasing the ground. Well, theoretically, the lien would go on the property most likely to try to enforce it. So that's the way I'm thinking of, is that we talk about solar, but this could apply to, honestly, other large scale farm operations. I mean, anything else that comes in, it's just standing out more. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, because of the increased workload that you're getting on this.
The footprint is huge.
Right. And that's kind of ahead of where we were getting, because but I guess it does kind of tie in. And maybe Janet and Kevin want to chime in here is, how does Soil and Water Conservation District, do they fit into this? Does the weed district, how do they fit into this? If we start talking legal things like Justin is, this has got to be straightened out.
Yeah.
Who has responsibility? Do you guys have any thoughts, Janet or Kevin, on what we've been talking about so far on?
Well, originally, with the original ordinance, it was, when the county declared a weed district, they gave the responsibility to the Soil and Water Conservation District, who then appointed a weed board.
Right.
And we were in charge of the weed master, the weed supervisor.
Right.
And then in 95, the judge and county council decided that it was too much of a liability to have the weed person be an employee of the Soil and Water District. So everything was transferred to the county, to the road department, because of their interpretation of the ordinance, which no one else interpreted that ordinance that way. And that's where it's been since 95. And the SWCD was trying to create responsibilities for the weed supervisor to get more of the weed problems over the county, around the county, taken care of. And it just kind of morphed into roadside and paint spraying. And that's kind of where it ended with the Soil and Water District.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I wanted you guys to sit in, and I'm glad you did, is if we start assessing fees or doing something, we want to make sure we're good with you guys, on whose responsibility, or if you even care anymore. Is this just a county deal? Why do we even have a weed district? Or should it all be Soil and Water Conservation taking care of this? And, I don't know. That's what I wanted to make sure we're good with you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it was the landowners originally that wanted to recreate this weed district. And it was their opinion that the Soil and Water District, because of dealing with agriculture and all natural resources in the county, should be the responsible party for the weed district. And it worked great for a couple of weed supervisors that we had. And then it just kind of fell apart.
Yeah. So I could touch on a little bit of that, I guess, for like a backstory. What I go off is the 1990 ordinance, and I have copies if you'd like to see it, but it was the ordinance that explains what how the weed district was formed, and it has the verbiage in there. It was declared a weed district, whereas it was received petitions from citizens requesting this, that it was, whereas it was brought by a popular vote, established a weed controlled district, whereas noxious weeds become a menace to public, and on and on and on, their ordinances. And then what a weed district is kind of outlined here, and, because it is kind of different, like, than a weed department. And a weed district's core focus is to destroy and prevent A-listed weeds from going to seed and prevent the spread of noxious weeds as a district. As specified to perform duties as a weed inspector, which the county also voted and has an ordinance on a weed inspector for the county, and it's to discover A-listed weeds in the county, to serve as compliance notices, to supervise the destruction of noxious weeds growing in the district, to conduct investigations, approve plans, clarify expenditures, planning to weed department control projects or weed control projects. And that's all under the weed inspector. And then third would be public education and outreach. Fourth is promote and develop biological weed control agents. And then fifth, inventory and mapping of noxious weed locations in the district. And then six is contract for spray application services.
That, you know, and that describes that weed district,
Yes,
but it doesn't really right now make any difference because the weed district is inert. It's not being
it's
used,
not
right?
being, it's not being
So
utilized.
unless you're gonna revive it or something, you're operating as a county with, not under those rules. You're operating under county rules, right?
Under county direction, under county,
Yeah.
workload, yes. And I think the thing to recognize is that the voters, this is what the voters want, this is what they voted on, this is what they set up underneath the Oregon state statutes. So this is kind of what they had envisioned, what they signed up for, and then,
But it's,
and not to say that the county roadside spraying isn't bad or these other contracts, it's just, it's morphed into a heavy load with the roadside spraying. And of course, the wind energy,
it may have been what they wanted, but it's not even been used for how many years now?
yeah, for, I don't know.
So since 95?
Yeah,
Yeah, probably, yeah,
20
some years.
twenty
yeah.
some years,
Yeah.
if the voters wanted it.
Until it got to the point where, like in Soil and Water Conservation District, in their office, like people stopped coming to them with issues and stuff, because they knew it was like, this ain't gonna get anywhere and nothing's happening. And they were being, it was involved a lot with them early on.
Right,
It's-
okay.
it-
So
yeah.
what I'm trying to get at is, I understand now what it is.
Mhm.
Is it any use at all, or you just set it aside, or
There,
ignore it and go about the county's business and do what we're gonna do, or what?
so there is a use for it for sure. And the state, the Oregon Department of Agriculture is really pushing this stuff too. They're like, you need to do this. You need to get on.
Well, I know
So you
the
guys are a weed
description,
district.
but if
Yeah,
you just took that description and put it over to the county weed department, and said, okay, here's your mandate.
yeah,
They're not hung up on the weed district, they're hung up on what needs to be done.
correct.
So
correct.
you just take that description and say, okay, it
And
becomes,
implement it, yeah.
yeah, it becomes the mandate of the
Yeah.
county weed department.
Could-
But
could-
I'm trying to get to the legal part of
Yeah,
what is the weed district's role or function, and it seems to be nothing.
so, it's very little right now. I can give you an instance, like here's an adoption that the county took, and it says, this is matter of amending an ordinance, says whereas the county adopted a weed control district, and whereas the Soil and Water Conservation District, acting as advisory board for the Morrow County Control District, has recommended that Morrow County Court amend this ordinance. So it's they act as basically your guide to A-listed weeds to
Who acts?
ordinance,
Who does?
the Soil and Water Conservation District.
But
That's
they
your,
haven't been, it hasn't been doing anything since 1995 when they turned it over to the county.
yeah.
Yeah, Janet, yeah,
Yeah, it hasn't been 20 years. There was a pretty hefty biocontrol, portion. Being forwarded, I mean, pretty much across the state. Because we had the knapweed bugs and they were shipped everywhere across the state. So, I mean, it wasn't inactive, but it wasn't contacting landowners and seeing if they had A or B list weeds.
So there's landowners right now that are trying to reach out and say, we want these biocontrols.
It's still,
It almost sounds to me like it should be a special district.
Yeah, there's no funding tied to this.
Right.
Correct?
So the-
That's why I'm kind of concerned about.
Yeah, so I mean, if it was a special district, they would get taxation and they would be able to use that
Yeah.
money. That's what it sounds like to me is what, if the people voted it in and they wanted to have a weed program, then it should have been a special district.
And that, by doing this, that opens it up to, action committee to go out for a bond to get those resources.
Which would coincide when 1995, when they created a bunch of special districts.
well, I guess you'd have to go back to the Soil and Water Conservation District and say, if you wanna use this district, whether it's special or whatever, they'd have to run it, right? County's not gonna run it. You're not gonna run it, are you?
Well, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's,
I know, but you
Yeah.
aren't.
I'm not, I don't
And
have.
so
the
I'm saying,
resources,
what's the
yes.
purpose of this? To me, I don't see any purpose for the weed district, but I don't want to say, okay,
Yeah,
I don't know what to say. I mean, if nobody cares, then you just go about your business and we do our deals with the solar and just ignore all that.
well, I think, well, I know
States-
people do care. People do,
States-
people come to me and the state
State will
cares.
not allow that.
The state says, you need to be doing this. This is what you.
Well, you need to be doing that, but not, they don't care if it's a weed district or the county's doing it. They don't care. 'Cause that's what you just said.
Yeah.
You're just using that mandate in there.
Yeah,
The state says you have to do what's in that mandate. They don't say
Yeah.
you have to have a weed district with a board that's doing it and have employees and all blah, blah,
you
blah.
just-
They're
yeah.
just saying you have to do what's in that description there.
Mhm.
They want us to comply with the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I'm.
And I don't, and I cannot, the way it is, I cannot, for instance, implement a biocontrol plan or implement, some of these other instances in here with the amount of contracts and the wind energy stuff. And that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to more personnel. So this can be managed, so the roads can be managed, the other contracts.
No.
And it could be a complete district.
Yeah, no, I understand what needs to be done, the work. I'm just asking about the
I
underlying.
understand what you're saying now, Chair, is that the state just wants the ordinance implemented. I don't think they necessarily care if it's the county or the weed district or the soil and water conservation or what have you. They just want this
Exactly.
taken care of.
Exactly, and
I believe that
yeah,
that's what it
and
is.
when we start getting into the county as far as assessing people money for weeds, I didn't want to get sideways with the soil water conservation and say, hey, we have the weed district, that we should be, see, that's why. But if nobody cares, then just let it sit there and you adopt that. Maybe the county commission has to, approve a policy that's your new mandate, and just go about our business. And just let the weed district just sit there and do nothing. That's what I kind of wanted to clear up in this, see. Not the actual.
That's actually what's happening right now.
I know,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure but see, we haven't assessed any money yet, Corey.
Mhm.
And once we start doing that, were we gonna get sideways with soil water conservation or a private contract? See, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay.
Make sure if we're gonna, when there's no money, nobody cares, see? You know how the old saying goes.
Yeah.
So once we start assessing a bunch of money, and I'm not saying that they would want it, but maybe, I don't know, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just clear it up ahead of time. So once we start
Mhm.
getting in money and putting in our budget from renewables, Somebody says, doesn't come forward and say, hey, that should go to the weed district, not to you guys. You see, that's what I'm trying to get ahead of time,
Okay.
you know?
And there was accusations about money grabs from the county,
Yes.
from private
Yeah,
landowners,
and
right?
that's
We,
what
we got
Trump
that.
brought
This
up.
is kind of what's bringing this
Oh, okay,
to the
okay.
forefront,
Yeah.
because there were certain solar farms that were already out there. And we got letters that said, this is crap, this is just a money grab. You're just
Yeah.
trying to make money for the county, which Justin will tell us, we cannot do that, right?
No,
We
yeah.
can only recoup what it costs.
Yeah.
We cannot make money on this. So, you know,
Yes,
that's the rock and the hard place we're in today,
okay, thank
okay?
you.
So,
So
does that help clear up?
it does.
Okay.
Do the funds go to the county or the Soil and Water Conservation District or the Weed District?
Right.
You guys got any more thoughts? Janet, Kevin, do you want? If the county started assessing money to renewables, would you guys step in and say, hey, that money should go to us?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, we could house it if you guys don't want to deal with it. Yeah, I think the big thing is just manpower for Corey. If he gets what he needs personnel wise, I think a lot of these become non-issues.
Yeah.
And then he can get done what he needs to get done. And I think that's the big thing is
Okay.
just getting Corey what he needs.
Yeah.
Getting help with the roadside spraying. Like you say, I mean, the weed district it could come in handy. I don't think we need to dissolve it or anything like that. But yeah, if these statutes if everyone's comfortable with under the county, and we get Corey comfortable, I don't think we need to rock the boat per se. We just need to get Corey what he needs so he can get done what he needs to get done.
That's exactly why we're here right now. That's the exact purpose of this is to get him the resources he needs to take care of this. And we feel that the renewables should kick in funding to do this. So that's why we're here. Yeah, okay.
Justin,
Well, I think,
in writing, acknowledging that the Soil Water Conservation District / Weed District
Well, yeah.
recognizes and acknowledges that the county is going to receive these monies and administer the program.
Probably, and more time. I know, Mr. Jensen brought this up at a meeting we had on Monday, kind of about this, weed district aspect and based on this old ordinance and haven't had a chance to review all the way. So that's all us. We just, another on Monday. So I would definitely need more time to look that over. So that, yeah, I think that's one thing. That's one aspect. But yeah. So yeah, I think for initial part with that, I'm gonna touch base on it. It's just an initial review of it. It's like we create this district that's unfunded, that's under the county, that works with the clerk and the treasurer. If you read this older one, that then the district attorney is actually in charge of actually true enforcement. If you read it, it's that aspect. And so it is, it's definitely seems more like a county position of such, but with the board being the Soil Water Conservation District. So like I can see in my mind. Right?
It's an advisory board.
Advisory, that's what I meant, advisory board, which I say makes sense when I think about it, because maybe the idea is, okay, well, there'd be the advisory board, they have the best information to oversee this person, okay, but still a county position. So, no, in response, yes, I probably want to, or even more time to make sure it's clear.
I think Janet had something.
Yeah, Janet, did you want to add something? Yes, Janet?
yeah, with declaring the county a weed district, I think it offers credibility and authorities to the county to do these certain weed control things. I think if there's not a weed district declared, then it's kind of not real clear who has the authority.
Okay. Okay.
So if this helps too, I have like a delegation of duties with the board and the soil and water. What this was, I don't even know where or who this came up from. I think I found this on the shared drive, but it's listed April 15. And it
April 2015.
yeah, I'm sorry. April 2015. And it says, the duties of the county court or the BOC is, to maintain a weed control district in accordance with, ORS 569. Determine what weeds are subject to ordinance enforcement, like A-listed weeds, to review proposed draft, or excuse me, to review proposed budget and authorize as appropriate, and to appoint a weed advisory board. And that's your duties. And then down here for the weed district, it's duties of a weed advisory board is make weed list recommendations and relay public concerns to the weed coordinator. And then my duties, it says adhere to job description as approved by the county court. Report monthly to Morrow County Public Works Director in written form. Activate within the weed program. Also report monthly to Morrow County Court and Morrow County Weed Advisory Board. And then also to respond promptly to all citizen concerns and calls, either in written or verbal, with written documentation.
But about the first four of those points aren't being done.
Of the weed control?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so the question,
Well, on my duties, it's just reporting to you.
I know, but
Yeah.
the advisory board and all
Yes,
this stuff
yeah,
is not
yeah.
being done.
Oh, no, he goes to the
I
advisory
do.
board monthly.
Yeah, I do.
The first three things that you read off there.
Oh,
Oh, the duties of county court? Why don't you show it to him?
yeah, would you like to?
Yeah, let me, well, maybe I have that. Let's see.
I don't think I sent this in as attachment. I just found this.
Okay, so duties of the weed advisory board. There is no weed advisory board.
You,
Well,
Or the commission-
the ordinance specifies that the Soil and Water Conservation District is the advisory.
Well, I
weed advisory
understand
board.
that, but they're not active is what I'm getting at. Do we need to activate this under what,
So-
your idea? Because right now it's inert. The whole thing is inert. None of it's being done.
so. I'll
Are
say
you
my,
proposing to activate the whole thing up and, and do all these things, have our duties are, maintain a weed district, determine which weeds are we supposed to be doing. Are you saying activate all this or go on the way
no,
we're
I'm
going?
saying activate it. Yeah, activate what's.
Start doing all
Well,
these things?
if I can get there with personnel, yeah, I mean, cause they are involved with me monthly when I like visit with them, like, we want you to do biocontrols, we want you to do this. And my report to them is, we're working on it, we're trying to get personnel, I can get to this, they're advising me on what should be done, like, in the county.
Who's this?
The. soil
Our
and water-
board, the district board.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
They do
yeah.
meet monthly.
And you appointed them as my advisory board.
Oh,
So
okay,
you are the ultimate authority over this district, over this
okay.
department, you,
As an advisory board, they would not have control of fiscal matters.
yeah,
They're an advisory board only.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and just to let you know, 569, I think Justin and I should jump into that a little bit more. There's specific legal natures of forming a weed control district. It may more or less means that other people can't come in and form districts within it. So it's more or less a protective nature rather than, and a concession that the county is in charge of all the weeds throughout the
Yeah,
whole
okay.
county.
Okay, so we're kind of are active.
yes,
And that's under
absolutely.
Janet's,
Yeah, yeah. It is
advice
active.
is keep a weed district because the people want to see a weed district.
They do.
So, okay, so,
Yes.
so we
Yeah.
got that settled. We'll keep the
And-
weed district.
And I think,
I mean, or
you-
keep it, it is active and we're using it now. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
and honestly, a lot of the energy issues that I'm dealing with are straight out of a weed district, what is taking place in a weed district, or, yeah,
Okay,
with what the state considers as responsibilities for a proper weed district.
okay.
And you, in our meeting in my office, asked, well, who is the face of the weed district? And ultimately, like, you are the face of the weed district. You're the overall body that the state recognizes as being in charge of the weed district with the control of the board, with the control of what weeds are listed in the county, or essentially you are the weed district.
Okay.
So does the OSU extension, or is there an extension that actually qualifies what the weeds, the obnoxious weeds are, or is that something that, because obviously we can't. We're not
Botanists.
agronomists or botanists that can.
There's a
I
list.
think,
That-
I think
that's
Janet
what-
can speak to that.
Okay,
Yeah, the Soil and Water Board created the weed lists in conjunction with the weed district and the weed supervisor. Well, there wasn't a supervisor when it was reactivated. But as the Soil and Water Board made the list with their knowledge of the county. And then if you want to add a weed or remove a weed, then the Soil and Water District would contact county court. And then you would do a resolution. The county court would do a resolution. With public information of, you know, this weed's gonna be added, or this weed has been controlled, so we're taking it off.
good to know.
Okay.
Interesting.
So I think that settles that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
This is great. So I'm learning a lot here.
yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Just everybody understand, this is what we need to do, right? We need to
And-
learn this stuff.
And
Because
another, yeah. and
before
another
this, I had no
thing-
idea I had anything to do with any weeds.
And if the county commission isn't doing something they should be doing,
Yeah.
is make sure that you bring it to us to do, you know, as far as our responsibilities in this weed district, okay? And then, okay, so that's good for me. So I guess now it would come down to, you know, how are we gonna set the fees for what we charge the renewables, right? Like, are we at that point? And then Justin's gonna tell us how we can collect from them. But then we'll go back to what we've already negotiated with the one wagon wheel.
Mhm,
Solar farm, okay, was $16 an acre.
mhm.
And we agreed, I'm just gonna go back over to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
We kinda agreed that a solar farm is probably the easiest to figure because
Yeah.
it's consistent all across. And acreage makes sense,
Yeah.
okay? And you came up with a figure, I gave it to them, they said, okay. And so and it came out to about $16 an acre, so that we could use, would you feel comfortable, we use that any solar farm moving forward? Well, $16 an acre,
Yes, yeah.
okay.
But to be, clear and transparent on that, a lot of that fee is really needed up front in the first several years. And, because there's so much going on, there's so much to capture, there's so much to,
Administer.
administer. And then after that, program is set up, after the infrastructure's in place, and like on a maintenance side of it, like down the road, when things are set and set for the county and we didn't have any escapage and everything's good, that should really diminish.
Yeah, the $16 an acre should.
Should, yeah, really diminish.
So
to
that's something
very
we'll have to go
little.
back and redo with this solar farm then, because they've agreed to the life of their contract with us, SIP agreement, to pay us $16 an acre. So I'll have to go back and tell them, no, it's for the first X number of years, and then it's gonna diminish off.
I thought we took an average,
So-
so we were kind of light at the front.
Yeah,
We wouldn't be completely being reimbursed for everything the first
Everything.
5 years. But then it would,
That makes sense to me too.
I thought we came up with $16 was an average over the
Because
project.
The pilot
Am I wrong?
agreement is 15 years, do you remember?
Mhm.
Most of those are.
Yeah, 15 years, so, you know, then that way it would just be flat $16 an acre, plus there's a 3% increase every year for inflation
mhm,
over 15 years, the life of the SIP agreement, the pilot agreement anyway.
yeah.
And if they would redo it, then, okay.
And yeah,
And I don't know if there
and
is
I
a
thought
renewal on
that
pilot.
was,
If they're still there, then, if you put it as part of the, well, we'll talk about that next, because if you put it part of the pilot, the pilot expires, they don't pay anything more. Well, let's talk about that next. One thing at a time. Okay, so let's just, for argument's sake, we'll just take $16 an acre and leave it there.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, 60,
Okay.
yes.
So.
Yep.
And the thing we've really been wrestling with and talking about is, what do you do with the wind?
So Dave, is it $16 a disturbed acre or 16 acres of the boundary of the
Total
project?
acres, they got 7,000 acres that they're.
And they're gonna have panels on 5,000 of it, they're paying,
It doesn't matter. If they have a 7,000 acre footprint, that's what we're going with.
okay,
That's what I told,
okay.
that's what I divided, well, I didn't tell them. I just went on FSEC and looked at what their total footprint of their solar farm was and divided 120,000, by that. Come up with the 16.
Yeah.
So it was really our doing, they put it at, but it
Well,
was
it's
for the
just
whole footprint.
Because if it was disturbed acres, then you could
Yeah.
apply
I-
the same formula to wind, you know? You'd know
Yeah.
how many acres are taken up by roads, and you could include a small buffer on each side of the width of the road, the footprint of a tower and a small buffer around there. And come
Well,
up
you
with an
could do
acre.
that anyway.
We all point different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Janet, yeah?
Yeah, FSA uses a certain percentage of acres for each wind tower. So you could get that information from them and use it. It's probably the same for every wind tower. Roads are included. So you would know what your acreage is. For
Well,
wind.
so, yeah, based on, say, a wind farm comes in and of course, if they have a footprint of 10,000 or a footprint of 8,000, what really matters is how many towers they're putting in there. So we come
Right.
up with a per tower cost for weed, to take care of weeds.
Right, cause a lot of them are in cropland. And the landowner's going to take care of that cropland. And then anything on rangeland, the landowner's gonna take care of, their rangeland except for the wind tower area.
And the roads. And the roads.
Well, she said that's kind of standard.
Yeah, so
If
it's
you
the
have
wind, it's the wind
X-
tower area
You
and then
gotta
a
try
buffer
to, you
around
gotta
it.
try
and
and
the
find,
roads.
simplify a little bit, so you're not measuring the roads, right,
No,
Eric?
yeah.
On each
No,
project.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what she's saying, is there's an average. for
Right,
wi- for
that's
each
right,
wind,
yeah.
Which includes roads, buffers. and the tower,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So you take a tower and it's not gonna be exact.
Mm-hmm.
You take a tower and say, okay, for every tower, you're gonna pay X amount.
Yeah, cause FSA has already done that.
Yeah, cause they'll have producers that have contracts, say it's a CRP contract and they'll need to deduct those acreages because it's going into
Yeah,
wind energy. So they've done a lot of those calculations. It might be something that would be of use.
yeah. Well, basically what it would come down to is we just need to know. We'll go with the per tower cost. It's just.
What is it?
It's up to you and
Yeah.
to Eric, basically, to come up with what cost do we attach to every tower, right?
Yeah. We can do that.
So we got $16 an acre plus whatever tower for the wind. And Justin tells us how to collect it.
Well, the tower.
Well, or if we can.
Huh?
I'll be clear about if we can.
If we can.
I wanna be
What?
clear, yeah, I'll budget at some point, but what I'm understanding so far, let's pretend the 16 for solar project. That amount is for you doing the weed abatement itself. It is not doing what you're currently already doing of just the monitoring aspect. That is actually the control of the weeds there. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
The fees we're talking about is for monitoring. Not
Compliance,
Yeah,
not
thank
control.
you.
And-
Compliance, not control.
And
But
And if you did have to do control, then so is that an extra amount of money? Is that added,
so.
is that gonna be
the-
added on?
what-
that would
what-
be a bill.
What's been involved is some maybe wrong applications that the weed department has had to correct and some issues about, well, we just don't know what to do here. So involvement with that, coordination, advising. It's a lot. It entails a lot, not just keeping track of the weeds or compliance, but it's been.
Let me interject something now. Ryan, who we've been talking to for the last, he understands that this is just compliance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think it says it in the pilot. I was gonna get it up here.
It does not.
Huh?
It does not.
Does it?
No, it's
It
not.
just says the company understands the county shall use the additional amount to fund the Morrow County Weed Department.
Yeah, see, that's where Justin might have to give us some advice, is we wanna make sure that, that everybody knows exactly what they're buying for that 16 an acre. And then if they think they're buying, mitigation, they're totally wrong.
But the hard part, I guess, when I think about these still, on the base amount, I was hoping it was more than just compliance. Because the mitigation, if I step back, let's think about the idea as the county office will pretend for weed abatement, the ordinance talks about monitoring and then asking for compliance, waiting for compliance, compliance isn't done. Then the county goes out, fixes the problem, then bills. Just like a nuisance, like another nuisance like we'd have for planning. Planning comes in, oh, you didn't pick the trash up, pick the trash up, do the trash. Okay, we're gonna go in, here's the bill. The issue somewhat with these is with the monitoring, that's kind of, person would think, and rightfully so, a solar program, a solar pilot program is unique as it has a set amount, 7,000, I've read the amount per megawatt. The pilot program.
That's set by the
That's
state.
the max, correct, but that is the entire, that is a payment in lieu of taxes.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the payment in lieu of taxes is every county government idea that, oh, we're paying taxes, that's the idea, it's kind of fund our roads. And it's gonna go fund that greedy DA's office, it's gonna go fund planning, and it's a set amount, which is why a lot of times, generally in our county previously, we weren't a huge fan of the pilot because it had a set amount that we didn't agree with, took into account all the costs actually to county departments. The issue being in this case is the person say, well, I'm paying 7,000. That is a payment in lieu of taxes. Isn't that already paying for a county department? Why am I paying an additional on top of that? And if that's the case, why is Farmer Joe not paying additional on top of it?
Well, if a developer comes in and goes to the planning, don't they have to pay fees to build and to get, don't they pay fees for work done by, other county agencies?
Well, true, but ours is not they're not doing pre-work. Part of the ordinance is purely talking about compliance already. That they send out like if we think, I guess we can maybe amend the ordinance, but if the ordinance says this is the set process you must have, it doesn't assign any fees on top of it. Now, if we had an ordinance saying every landowner shall have a weed fee of, they were taxed $10 per acre a year. Then you can say, okay, well, that's an additional cost by you, Farmer Joe, have 5,000 acres. You definitely should pay more than Susie here, who only has 5 acres in the county. But we don't have that. It's more like it's tied in right now with the property taxes. And so I guess the planning does have some fees on those, but I worry this one is on top of a fee that's already being assigned. That's the only where I would have is that since it's a payment loop, and that's more particularly for a pilot. A SIP agreement for wind towers, I say it's totally different because these are tied into two things. One is the company is asking for a benefit for a project. They're already getting a benefit by a payment in lieu reduction through a pilot program or a SIP agreement. Pilot's tough because it's a capped amount of 7,000, I think, right? He brought more than me. But the SIPs are broad. SIPs are easy to add these into. But I'll say this is simple in a SIP agreement because that is a simple, what's the amount? Oh, well, we want to pay this much. Well, hey, we're gonna let you know, we've had a lot of issues with weeds on wind towers. And so our goal now is every time we're gonna include $16.
There's been add-ons on all the SIPs. They say, we're gonna give you $5 million up front for this or that. You
But
know?
those are simpler than the pilot, because the pilot.
Yeah, that's what, I know, I'm just reiterating what you're saying,
Absolutely, yeah.
you know, to make sure it's clear in my.
$1 million
mind.
for
Yeah.
school, stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. That's where it is so flexible in a SIP agreement.
Okay, so tell us how to tag it onto a pilot agreement. Or just say, well,
I mean, I would say
why
pilot.
can't you discriminate? I mean, is there?
All day, that's not right.
Well,
You're doing the right word there, Dave.
Economically discriminate
You don't want
against,
the
okay, so because you're not charging one landowner and you're charging another.
That, in the penalties, fees and costs in the ordinances says that the landowner will pay.
But that is a after effect.
Correct.
So I want to make
After
clear
effect.
that's the difference. It's like, this is just like, it'd be like me saying, I wanna pre-fine you, defendant, because I know you're gonna commit crimes. We know you're gonna commit crimes. Let's do a pre-payment of $10,000 because I know you're gonna do it. That's the issue here, is that this is different on the fact that these are enforcement aspects by saying you haven't complied. And so now we are gonna do it. We're gonna fine you this way, $500.
Right.
So I mean,
And it takes the incentive away from the energy place to even do the weed abatement at that point, because they're already paying for it up front. It's like, well, then we're just gonna step back and let somebody else do it. Just like the thief, who you know is gonna be a thief, so you charge him. Well, then I'm gonna thief if you're gonna charge me.
The fees were just for management so that there wasn't a spread.
but they're an additional one. And I think it's fair to say there's a logical basis to include it, I think, in, the wind towers and the solar. You can see like, hey, these projects, they come in, all the soil gets worked out, and we see in the fields and cause the weeds, we understand that. And that's simple to argue for a SIP. I mean, I would have no issue at all saying, yeah, as part of our SIP, we do these. You don't like it, that's fine. You could say no, pay full taxes, not an issue. And you don't get an additional fee for that normally because it's an allowed use generally on a EFU zone of wind. and
So
solar.
SIPs are taken care of, but the solar
Pilots.
farms they use the pilots.
That's a worry, I think, because the state has capped us. Right, unless we reduce.
That's not gonna get you. anywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the only thing I dislike about the pilots, because they did limit that. When we look at that's the concern. You could do it a separate agreement outside of it.
Well, it's not
We
a
could
tax,
say-
it's just a user fee, just like any other department would charge a user fee. Does a road department charge companies that are gonna do certain things that, extra?
I
Does-
mean, not
does
the
the-
same,
Does
no?
planning, does all these agency, if you wanna get documents from your office, do you charge a certain amount per page?
But that's,
That's a user fee, cause I want those documents under the freedom
these
of
are forced
information.
user fee, right?
Huh?
This would be a forced one. This would be a company saying, I'm not asking you to, I guess it'd be an additional fee, almost like a business
Of
for,
course, they don't have to
Well,
do it.
no, that's true.
It's just like they don't have to ask you for the freedom of information documents, but if they do, here's what it's gonna cost you. Well, wait a minute, it's covered under my taxes.
I think the issue is if they are asking for it as part of a pilot. And when the state itself limits to what you can ask for a payment in lieu of tax to a max
Well,
amount.
that's why
what's
I
limited.
put down here maybe as a separate agreement.
Yeah, and I think that could be fine.
Okay, just say, okay, we'll do this, we will sign this pilot if you sign this separate agreement.
I'd have to double check that part. But I think, well,
It's a little bit extortion.
yeah, because theoretically it could be like.
First, I wanna do discrimination, not extortion. You know what I mean?
Because you'd have to figure out the separate limit on it. You'd say 7,000 for this, and it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds fine. Over here on this agreement, you also are going to agree to pay us 10,000 more per megawatt. It'd just be the exact same thing and tying the two together.
So before you entered into any tax abatement program, you could enter into a weed fee, and then you move into your tax abatement program negotiation.
Or, I mean, I would also consider them
That way they're separate and you aren't tying approval of one to the other.
or the other aspect I would say too is that I would see this, I mean, it's a tough one, as a benefit of the company by saying, hey, we can offer you this because we know the issues with this problem here. This is an additional service that the county is providing your company for this cost, because if you don't, it's gonna get out of control. And it's gonna cost you a heck of a lot more to keep up on it. It's almost like a benefit you offer, and that's where I actually thought it was also not just monitoring, but correction, or whatever this compliance, whatever the right term is.
Mitigation.
Mitigation, because it's like, oh, if it's tied together, then that's a huge benefit, like saying, hey, you guys aren't gonna probably do shoot, and all these companies say, yeah, we don't want to try to track down a company and do this, we'd love for you guys just to handle it for us. And a separate agreement would be fine. The hard part is tying it as a requirement.
Right, well, and now you're going back to where you have an issue with you're competing with private industry.
Well,
And
not in compliance.
For mitigation, you
No,
would.
for mitigation, you would, he's
Yeah.
talking about mitigation
Yeah,
as
that's true,
well.
I mean, mitigation, I was hoping.
That's where I see that issue, because then you're gonna have the guy from Hermiston who does weed spray say, hey, why didn't I get a chance to do this?
Wilbur's, Wilbur Ellis,
Yeah.
Simplot,
Yeah. Is there-
Invasive spraying.
Yeah, this is coming
It
from
would be great if they would.
No, right, yeah,
It would be
but,
awesome.
but they could also, unfortunately.
Can you tie it to the road use agreement? Cause they can't start any projects until the road use agreement's done. For
Yeah, but it's
Where-
not, but how is that tied? I mean, I can see if the road
weeds
works,
is part of public works.
but we're 15 years after.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see,
Right.
it's a corrective aspect, right? We end a road use agreement generally, once you do the afterwards, the
Once they're in production.
inventory, the end
Yep.
inventory.
Yep.
And then it's completed.
That's right. That's true.
So I think that's the difference.
But like Jeff said, if you do it completely separate, on its own, it's a standalone, then there's really no competition, it's just a county ordinance. It's a county weed ordinance. And we do a contract for any business that comes in, farmer or wind or power or anything that comes in, as long as you have a county weed indoor ordinance, then if you're building a, whatever it may be, you're building a widget farm, if it's gonna be out on farmland or out on land that has weed issues, then you could say, well, even if that comes in, you have to sign a contract for the weed department, for the weed.
Yeah, and I think, or if it
Wait a
was, yeah. And I guess it was also part of an ordinance separate, that if it applied to everyone equally.
Yes.
That's the good and bad about it, but that's the,
Yeah.
that'd be easier to do. I think, sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say, I mean, just to kind of move this along here. Do you wanna just say there's no way, or do you wanna look at it, or
I
what?
think I should look at it some more. I think that's fair, because I think it's an important factor, and again, these are one of the things I do not like pilots for this reason, because it's a cap, so there has to be maybe some way around to, as you mentioned, fees, of other departments.
But
Those
the
are
pilots aren't going anywhere, and we got this one on deck, and
Yeah.
they're getting close to wanting to approve it, so we're gonna have to have an answer on that, so what, probably soon, I would say. Cause they've got it approved with their people, and he's getting ready to ask us to approve it, so.
I received an inquiry this morning saying, where was it?
When
So
was it?
where were we at in the process?
Yeah, well, this is where we're at, so, okay.
And I think this one would be very
I
simple.
didn't know I thought we were, okay, we did get the notice, that's what I was waiting for him to say.
Yeah, where we
We're
at?
ready to move forward, okay.
I mean, even, yeah, so an easy one for this one to say, hey, you want us to get it going, move forward. It'd be an easy one to say, we can do a separate agreement to apply this for the monitoring and make sure that's all clear. That'd be a simple one without even having to answer all the questions on it for this one.
Can you get something written up so we can send it to them? So the
Probably,
lawyer
yeah.
can, because we got to, I mean, they want to move forward with the pilot program.
I think
So
it'd
we
be,
want to remove it from the pilot agreement and send them along our separate agreement.
yeah, separate one saying, we're willing to do monitoring, and I think I'd want to make sure they understand. And almost having to work, say, hey, this is the exact things we're doing for this amount, assisting that.
I feel better about that too, because in this one, in the pilot, we don't exactly tell them what
Yeah.
it is they're getting. for
And
the
I can
pilot.
imagine them thinking like, we don't worry about weeds anymore, they're all taken care of.
Well, there was they didn't, you don't know what the next guy. 10 years from now.
That's the thing.
All of a sudden you have to spray my mini storage
Yeah,
for $16 an acre.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they sent an email this day, like, hey, is that all done? All taken care of here,
I got 16 bucks, I got weeds on my property, here's your $16, come take care of the weeds in my driveway.
Every farmer would too, so we're okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, so are we kind of good on where we're at here?
I think so, yeah, and I will work and also to make sure, because I think that's the key thing.
And at the same time, well, we don't have a wind tower deal on the docket yet, but you'll come up with a per tower cost.
Yeah.
And then
Oh, yeah.
we'll have a separate thing we'll inject into the SIP.
SIP's easy, yeah, that can be right in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he basically just gotta come up with the per tower cost. Okay.
The only thing I would say too is maybe before we even end, but from what I see so far, it sounds like a lot of this may be time to really start working on the enforcement. Being the strong arm sound, right?
Yes.
I think that is
Yes.
where not just your company, but others have like, so I was trying to help, but then certain companies and folks are taking advantage of it. And it might be time for those fees and the liens, I mean, on property.
Yeah.
And I think even with companies like this, that's something we're gonna need to be forceful with. And we've done the same things. People might say it didn't work, but I think it did work with the SIP agreement. When we started really making clear on the enforcement of the light, the flashing red lights.
Mhm.
I mean, people say, oh, it's still going on, but it's a heck of a lot better. We were the first of the dang state that made this work and it's worked. But that was also us saying, Mike Gorman really out there saying, hey, it's still doing it, it's still doing it. All right, here's what your tax bill is gonna be once you are no longer in compliance with your SIP agreement. But the same thing of saying, hey, we told you had to, here's your notice, here it is. No, we'll go in there and do it, but here's our itemized list. Now I went to the DA and we're filing the lien against your property. You have to be paid within 90 days. That's what the says by ordinance.
So, that's where I will keep coming back to making the state, because they are the permit holder for these renewable energy projects, not for an FSEC, making them the enforcement because they have the ability to shut down the production. Production
Yeah.
is more valuable to the developer than a fine. Because the production tax credits is what makes those projects work.
State's shown that they're probably not gonna step up and do that, unfortunately, right? And can we hold the
Well,
state?
have we asked them to yet? That's a really
I
good
think,
point. Have we
I
done
think
that?
that, I think that Corey has,
So it actually has to come as an order from the BOC. If it's overwhelming our local things, we're the ones,
oh,
the
we have to
BOC
take it to the
needs
state?
to say, Department of Agriculture, you need to come do this where it's beyond our capacity.
Oh,
Well,
good to know.
Sounds like we're there.
Where do we sign?
We've
You have
been
to,
hearing.
you have to
Yeah.
have specific instances to cite where this area needs to be mitigated. It's beyond our capacity. Department of Agriculture, you need to come in and take care of it.
We've been hearing from Corey that it's beyond his capacity and he needs more staff.
Yeah, for at least a year.
So, and this is where he needs to identify specific areas, bring it to us, we do it, and we send it to them after giving the landowner specific notice and follow that whole process. That's in our current ordinance.
Okay.
But he's still gotta drive around and
Yeah.
catch all
right.
this stuff.
Yes, that's right.
which is,
Still
a load.
overwhelming, yes. I have another quick question. So we have reached out to private industry, I'm assuming.
So I haven't reached out to private industry. What I do is I reach out to the energy companies and I provide them a list of
Potential
potential
Okay.
contractors.
as far as Tri-Cities and the Valley. And then I also reach out to them, give them a heads up. I am offering your business information to these people and trying to get them
So,
a heads up that I've been.
so if we are the weed compliance and weed control in the county
Yes,
and there is a weed problem,
yes.
we could hire private industry to come in and take care of it to our standard and then send that bill to,
Technically, we could, yes.
okay. I'm just asking questions.
No,
I'm
that's
not
good,
giving it,
That's nice and clean.
yeah,
Yes.
right?
You don't go through any liens or anything
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So that, and I'm just, asking the questions.
Well,
And-
if you send them a bill, they don't pay it.
Well, then you can go, then,
Then Odo would get involved and that'd go against their site certificate.
Okay, so everybody good here?
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah, no,
And
it's-
Justin, just one last thing is you have a copy of the pilot, so have you reviewed that yet?
I think I had it. I don't know if I've reviewed it.
Okay,
before,
cause
but
it sounds like they contacted Matt, so we gotta get ready to send that, make sure for us to approve it, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Without the weed part in it and a separate agreement. And I wanna send that separate agreement to them prior to us approving it, of course.
Yeah, no, making
Okay.
sure that's simple.
Okay, Kevin, Janet, you guys got anything you wanna add before we kind of wrap this portion up? No?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you
No.
for sitting in, I appreciate it.
do you guys think that we're going about this in the kind of the right manner?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, I just want to see Corey happy and get what he needs.
That's what we wanna do.
Yeah, we want to get him all the help we can too. and-
We wanna keep the weeds down.
Yep. Yeah, let us know if you need anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank
Thank you.
We're not done.
No, we're not done, but I'm.
You're done with-
Matt, 'cause I don't-
You're done with us.
Okay, I believe.
What's the next one?
So,
Kevin's here.
this is an added item that we've requested, is we went back and forth. The Board of Commissioners had approved expenditures to the Hefner Daycare and Hefner, the city of Hefner, for expenditures through our ARPA funds. And we were directed to create a grant agreement in order to allow those funds to be spent. As Kevin and I have dived into it, more Kevin has dived into it, we found out that there's certain reporting issues that would be prolonged, particularly with the nature of the items. And if there was any change of nature, particularly with the daycare, that they would have to pay that money back. And so he's gonna discuss an alternate that he would like to propose. We would like to chat about that during this work session and possibly have it as a business item at the next meeting if this seems like something that's worthwhile to do. We highly recommend it, but we'd like to chat through with you for just a few minutes here. And do you have? I think you should be able to share screen, yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna go through just a little bit of the background. County has two buckets of funds that we've received under the American Rescue Plan Act, which is ARPA. We've typically only referred to one of those buckets when we use the word ARPA funds. And that's the state and local fiscal recovery funds. That was the original tranche of funding that we received as a grant during COVID. And we received that money in two total payments of $2,250,000, well, two payments for a total of $2,253,747. When we did the first, and I wasn't here at that time, but when they did the first report on those funds, there was a one-time election that was allowed to be made that those funds were going to be utilized as a revenue replacement and under the standard exemption. And so I'll get into what that means in just a minute. The other bucket of funding that we have that we received, county received under the 2021 ARPA was the Local and Tribal Consistency Fund, or LATCF. And that was established more as a federal revenue sharing program to enhance revenues of tribal and local governments. And those funds were also received in two separate payments for a total fund amount of $731,052.26. Primarily, this is going to focus on, I've got some information here on the LATCF at the end, just to make sure that we're providing all the context, but this discussion is primarily going to focus on the state and local fiscal recovery funds, or the SLFRF funds. So requirements that are associated with the SLFRF funds, key deadlines, obligation deadlines. This is the deadline to formally obligate funds, is December 31st of 2024. So coming up in a couple of months here. That is after that deadline, those funds can no longer be obligated to any other type of project. There's a couple of caveats with that, but generally speaking, any funds that are not obligated for a specific purpose as of December 31st, 2024, have to be returned to the U.S. Treasury. If funds are obligated and something changes, there's a limited ability to re-obligate those funds. It would have to be for basically the exact same type of program or expenditure as what they're originally obligated for. So And I'd use, well, it's a hypothetical example. So if we were gonna, if we had obligated $1 million for a widget factory and, with, one organization, they were gonna build a widget factory and, that organization went under, after December 31 of 2024, our only recourse would be to re-obligate those funds to another contractor that was going to build a widget factory. Same widget factory, same location, same. So, but I say it's a very limited ability to re-obligate those funds. It's a very narrow ability to do that. Funds, though, don't necessarily have to be expended by December 31, 2024. The deadline for expenditure of funds is December 31st of 2026, which is about a year and a half from now, right? I won't go into the reporting requirements with the SLFRF funds. We just do annual project reporting, what we spent the money on. As I mentioned, we elected to expend these funds under the revenue replacement category, and we selected to utilize the standard allowance, which allows the county then to spend the award allocation on any governmental services throughout the period of performance. And so that's throughout the point where they were awarded to us to the expenditure deadline, as long as they're obligated. There's a few restrictions on the use of those funds. Government services is a pretty broad use of what those funds could be used for. There are some restrictions. They can't be used to fund a pension liability. They can't be used for debt service or to replenish rainy day funds. Settlements, satisfaction of settlements and judgments, and anything counter to the or that would contravene the intentions or the purpose of the American Rescue Plan Act and uniform guidance. Just as a reminder, government services, this is as defined in the Treasury Final Rule, can include, not limited to, maintenance or pay-go funded building of infrastructure, including roads, modernization of cybersecurity, including hardware, software, protection of critical infrastructure, health services, environmental remediation, school, educational services, provision of fire, police, and other public safety services. So essentially, anything that the county does, we could spend these monies on. So this, and this is not probably showing up very large for you guys, is it?
That's why I'm looking here, because I can't see. it.
So this is a reconciliation as of June 30th, end of fiscal year 2024. What this slide shows, Matt, is there any ability to make that bigger on the screen?
Possibly.
Like focus on content or anything
That's
like that?
sharper, isn't it? A little bit bigger. There's
Can you click on the views? And
no.
isn't there a focus on content? Maybe there's not.
Is full screen just?
Is that any better for you guys?
A little bit bigger.
Sorry about that. All right, so you can see on the top line there is the original amount of the SLFRF award. And then I have grouped together the various expenditures or commitments that have been made in the first column on the left. So you can see all of the funds at this point in time, or as of June 30th, 2024, had been committed. The middle column are the funds that had been expended and for what project or program those were expended for. So out of the 2.25 million, 1.265 had been expended as of June 30th, 2024. And that remains that leaves a remaining committed but not expended balance of $988,000, $988,277.82. The funds, I just have this is a reconciliation that was prepared for the audit. And you'll just note that some of the funds are in Fund 245, which is the water planning fund, and that's just the balance that was remaining, that was allocated for the GSI water coordinator contract. That is still open and we're having work done under. So you can see the two Hepner daycare expansion and the City of Hepner water improvement project have no funds expended. That's probably most likely because we don't have a grant agreement in place with those. Working with the auditors, the nature of those awards make the City of Hepner and make the daycare a sub-recipient of funds. And that presents a number of challenges that I'll go on to the next slide. Also, you'll see there was originally $600,000 committed through the end of fiscal 24 for interim ambulance service. That should say interim there. Of that 600,000, 578 was expended by the end of the fiscal year, which leaves 21,614 that was committed. But because it was committed specifically for the interim in last fiscal year, that won't be expended without a recommitment. So in total, well, let me back up. The FY24 Hepner daycare operational funds of $50,000, we actually made that payment shortly after the beginning of fiscal 25. And then again, there's some outstanding available funds on the GSI Water Solutions contract. But I'm primarily focusing on those last three, the remaining balance from the interim ambulance service commitment, the City of Hepner water improvement project, and the Hepner daycare expansion for the $932,000. The reasons I've got some concerns. Well, so first, as I mentioned, the daycare grant and the City of Hepner grants, those are going to be considered as sub-granting of federal funds. The monitoring requirements for subrecipient monitoring when we sub-grant federal funds are extremely onerous, complex, burdensome. Basically, we have all of the oversight responsibility to ensure that the subrecipient is compliant with all of the federal regulations that are attached to those funds. And I think at this point, the Board of Commissioners is pretty well aware of the burden that places on us just trying to be compliant with our own funds, let alone trying to monitor a subrecipient organization. Also, and this is primarily of concern with the Hepner daycare, and I've been working for several weeks on trying to figure out a way around this, but where they don't have an accountant on staff. That $800,000 grant would actually push them over the single audit threshold for the year, and so then they are not only would be required to comply with the uniform guidance in the federal regulations, but now they're subject to a single audit, and I would have to have an auditor do a single audit, which a whole bunch more, a lot of process documentation and policies, and
It's gonna cost them money.
it's going to cost them money, and I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that they have the resources to handle that in house. And I've talked with Lindsay offline about this a little bit, and yeah, that's kind of the agreement there.
And if they have the resources, it should be going to the new.
Yes.
Right.
No, I agree.
And then there's the complex subrecipient contracting requirements. Just getting a subrecipient grant agreement put together. And no knock on county council, but we've been working on one for months with the subaward of the EPA grant funds to Umatilla County, and it's still in progress. Getting that drafted and written, because it's, again, there's so many things that it's subject to. So, and obviously the concern And I guess I would also add, and I don't want to make a value assessment of where the Hepner daycare is at in their project life cycle. I've touched base and I know that they haven't secured land yet. We have about 18 months before December 24 of 2026, which is the expenditure deadline. And
Should- yeah.
I'm sorry, did you?
No.
That's the deadline for expenditure. I've done a few construction projects and I'm concerned at this point, since they don't have a site selected, that we could end up in a situation where we're up against a deadline and their project is still maybe not completed, or they haven't yet advanced all the funds, and we would be facing a situation where we'd have to return some of that funding to the Treasury Department.
It'd be more like 26 months, correct?
26 months,
To December 31st, 2026.
2026.
Yeah, this isn't even December 31st, 2024 yet.
Oh, yeah,
We're over
26
2
months.
years.
So
That's-
it's possible.
It's semantics. I just
Yeah.
wanted to-
It's possible, but it's a concern. I'm not saying that it's gonna happen or their project's gonna be delayed. I'm saying
Yeah.
what concerns me is any potential loss of funding, because I think that this is a valuable resource and a source of funding for the county. Even though it's kind of hard to spend it. So what I wanted to propose or put forward for the Board of Commissioners consideration, and obviously we can't make a decision right now in a work session, but this is kind of where my mind's at, where we can protect and keep the value of those funds in Morrow County and not put ourselves in a position where we risk having to potentially burden a local nonprofit with complex and costly accounting requirements, or in a situation where funds aren't expended in the time that they need to be expended by, we'd have to return them to the US Treasury. So this is, I kind of refer to it as a fund swap. And before I kind of dive in what it would entail, I met with our audit firm yesterday and talked with both Kathy, who's the lead on our audit, and then Brad Bingenheimer, who's the principal with that audit firm that's on our audit. And they both felt like they were comfortable with this approach, and they didn't feel like we were in violation, or didn't have any concerns about taking this approach, and it protects the value of those funds. So what it would entail would be to essentially, prior to December 31 of 24, de-obligate the remaining obligations for Hepner Daycare, City of Hepner Water Improvement Project, and the balance that's remaining for the interim ambulance service. And then re-obligate ARPA funding to a expenditure that is a qualifying expenditure that we know for certain is going to would cause those funds to be used up. And the first one that came to mind would be the ambulance service area agreement providers contracts. I think over the course of fiscal year 2025, it's just over $1.4 million that we're projecting to expend on that. So I would have zero concern that by 2026, we would have been able to expend the entirety of the $932,000.
I did the quick math here. This morning, the consent agenda was $366,000 for one provider for one quarter. So 366
Yeah,
times 4 is 1.464.
Yeah. We're just over 1.5 between the two of them, so yeah.
So now where the ambulance service contracts, the way that we budgeted for those, they're currently funded utilizing general funds. I'm certainly not suggesting that we don't proceed with the City of Hepner and the Hepner Daycare expansion projects. I would then say the next step would, we re-obligate the ARPA funding to the ASA services, the ambulance services, and then do a formal commitment of funds from the general fund, the funds that were previously committed to the ambulance service, to fund the Hetner daycare expansion and the water improvement project. At that point, I can write a one-page agreement to, or Justin could, to cover the county's interests and get a grant agreement in place with both the city and Hetner daycare. And that would not be subject to any federal regulation or compliance
Or timeline.
and we can make sure that those funds are committed, from year to year until they're expended, and they're not gonna expire. And we would still be able to utilize all of the SLFRF ARPA funding, make sure that the county receives the value out of 100% of those funds by paying for a known expenditure that we're gonna have in the current fiscal year. And then following, if the board were to be amenable to that strategy, we would need to do a supplemental budget. It would require a public hearing, because we're talking about some pretty big dollar amounts, and there's a couple of funds involved in order to do this. But essentially, it's swapping the funds from one use to another use, so we guarantee that we aren't in a position where we could potentially lose them.
So with this, this is a work session. We won't ask for a decision nor even a consensus. We will, since this was last added on it during BOC meeting this morning, I'll have Kevin forward these slides to Valerie so she can add those into the meeting minutes packet information in that. And we just want to let you know, this is what we're proposing to do. It's kind of a big thing with some big money on that impacts some good partners of ours. If you have questions though, feel free to contact me or Kevin. And Kevin, if I could ask you just to forward these slides to the commission as well, so you can peruse those but if you have any questions immediately, we can pick those for you.
My only question is, would there be any advantage to waiting until fiscal year is over to do this and do it without a supplemental budget, just do it in the next budget? Or is that possible, or is that pushing?
Hefner's looking for the money right
Okay,
now.
that's,
Yeah,
that's,
Hefner
okay,
wants
so
the
that's,
money,
that's,
and-
that's the only thing I needed to hear. I was
Yeah.
just curious.
And if the daycare finds a plot of
Property.
land,
Yep.
they're gonna
Want
be
it
ready to move
sooner rather
forward.
than- okay.
So I think to maintain the flexibility.
Yep, that's good. And I was thinking, just wait until January, but we really gotta wait until July. So,
And
yeah.
to be fair, though, there would be no increase of
Of the budget.
appropriations in total. It would affect a couple of different funds. There's gonna be puts and takes, but the net impact is gonna be zero because all of these funds are already appropriated.
The accountant and the lawyer won't like this, but it's a shell game.
I actually had that in my slides and decided to take that out.
We prefer the color of money.
I'll take the middle yellow or I call.
Here, Enron's hiring and. Essentially, that's what it is. But, ironically, there's something similar that the county currently takes advantage. We get federal funds for roads, and the state offers a fund swap. And where we give them the federal funds back, they take 10% of it and or 3%, I don't remember what the percentage is, and keep that, and then give it back to us in state funds so that we can utilize them without all the compliance requirements of federal funds. So the state set the shell game precedent, I guess. It's my point.
Did that put us in good or bad company? Just wondering.
Yeah, right, there you go, yeah. Do we wanna compare ourselves to the state?
I'm just saying there's a precedent. And this is actually something that came up in many sessions at the GFOA conference, because obviously we're not the only
Yeah.
people that are in this position, and nobody wants to lose any of the funding that they have. And this was a recommendation of one of the audit firms that presented there. And then, like I said, our audit firm signed off on it as well.
Yes.
Any other questions from the commission? Again, we appreciate the consideration. I know these two partners are very happy that the commission's voted to do this, and we will be looking to bring that before you at the next BOC meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. see you outside in front of the Walmart doing a shell game, although not.
Okay, we got that, some of them for the.
So we're done. So CDA issue.
Better-
Process.
better hit that.
Gavel us.
I don't understand.
Works out.
I know that there